President of the United States. 7 men, 5 women convicting Donald Trump on 34 felony counts.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace.
We're following the reaction from the courthouse to here in the Carolinas as local lawmakers have reaction and weigh in on today's historic verdict. Plus, our Verify team standing by to fact-check misinformation spreading online. And we're breaking down what comes next with sentencing expected later this summer. I'm Colin Mayfield. Our live team coverage of the Donald Trump guilty verdict starts right now. You're looking live right now tonight at Trump Tower in New York City. That as the former president of the United States was found guilty on all 34 counts just today. The jury deliberating for about 9.5 hours over 2 days before coming to their decision today in New York City. And that's where Jay Gray has been all day and then walks us through the latest developments.
Somber as he walks from the courtroom, former President Donald Trump lashes out at the decision.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. I'm a very innocent man.
The first man to sit in the Oval Office as president, then the defendant's chair in a felony criminal case, convicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records as part of a scheme to hide an alleged affair from voters.
While this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors.
Mr. Trump and his attorneys promising an appeal, the presumptive Republican nominee in the race for the White House, saying the decision that matters most will come on Election Day.
The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people, and they know what happened here.
Emotions just outside the courthouse following the verdict, a snapshot of the political landscape across the country, deeply divided.
So none of it seems fair to me, and I think a lot of people will feel the way that I feel, that they'll see this as a two-tier justice system.
It was a grand jury indictment and now a jury conviction of his peers. And this is the legal system working.
The former president returning to his Manhattan apartment, waving to supporters, still defiant despite the historic decision. Jay Gray, NBC News, New York.
Reaction has been constant for hours, with Republicans spending this evening rallying behind the former president. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott is widely viewed as a leader and leading contender to be Trump's running mate, especially in the GOP. He posted his support for Trump on social media just a few hours ago. Take a listen.
I can't believe the hoax, this sham, this absolute injustice justice system. D.A. Bragg and the judge should be ashamed of themselves. This isn't just ridiculous. This actually erodes the confidence that Americans have in the justice system.
Tonight, though, questions continue to roll in on this historic and landmark decision. WCNC Charlotte's Austin Walker continues our team coverage tonight in Austin. You spoke with a local expert just a few hours ago about better understanding what could happen next for the former president.
Yeah, so like we said, we've never seen this before in U.S. history. That being said, for a political science expert, this is very interesting to kind of understand and put our finger on things all together. That being said, we did go to Dr. Eric Heberling, political science professor at UNC Charlotte, to get a few of those questions answered. Now, the first question is, what is the next step for former President Donald J. Trump?
Sentencing will be next. Appeals will be next. And that'll certainly be a critical part of Trump's strategy to buffer the political fallout of this, to say, well, the case isn't over. There are X, Y, and Z mistakes that the judge made, that the appeals court will overturn this. So people who are desirous of suspending judgment for a while, Trump will certainly give them the ability to do that. Likewise, he'll continue to go out aggressively using news media, using his social media access to make the case that he thinks the verdict was illegitimate, politicized, and so forth. And that'll help continue to rally his supporters.
And since we've never seen anything like this, we wanted to know, is there anything that we could compare in U.S. history to this decision right here? Now, Dr. Heberling says the closest analogy is actually the sex scandal between President Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. That being said, the result from this, Gallup polls showed his job approval actually went up, something no one would have predicted. And when asked what would happen to President Trump in November for that vote, he believes it wouldn't hit the former president too hard.
My guess is that we're far enough away that it's not going to matter too much. Most voters who are paying close attention this far out have already made up their minds about whether they like Donald Trump or not. And the type of voters who decide at the last minute are those who pay least attention to politics. So a jury verdict 6 months out is not likely to move them very much.
He also believes that what we've seen with the former president, when there's any sort of negative news that comes about, polling will shift down, but in a few months, it will likely return back up. And the biggest question comes down to the voters. How many people will this matter for?
And that's what he alluded to today. The final verdict will be in November. Yeah. We'll see how they vote. Austin, thank you. Tonight, we are following the reaction from more local lawmakers. As you can see, lots of U.S. representatives and state lawmakers sharing their thoughts on today's verdict. North Carolina House Speaker Tim Moore calling the verdict today an affront to justice and to our country as we know it. Meanwhile, former state senator and current Charlotte City Council member Malcolm Graham writing on X that no one is above the law. That includes the former president of the United States. Well, today's verdict has caused a flurry of conversations on social media tonight. And with that, our Verify team is here to cut through the misinformation for you and make sure you know what's true and what's false. WCNC Charlotte's Tradisha Woodard is here with the facts before you share anything online here, Tradisha.
That's right, Colin. We've seen many questions pop up online within minutes of the verdict. Right now, we're going to look at some of the most acts. So let's start with this. Can Trump still run for president after being found guilty in a criminal case? Let's verify. Our sources are the U.S. Constitution and the Supreme Court. Article 2 of the Constitution gives 3 requirements to run for president. And those are being a natural-born citizen, being at least 35 years of age, and having been a U.S. resident for at least 14 years. Also, the Supreme Court has ruled that neither Congress nor state legislators can add any requirements on top of what the Constitution already says. So that means, yes, you can run for president if you've been indicted or found guilty in a criminal case. Tonight, another question asking by many people, can the former president pardon himself in this case? Now, for our sources, we'll be using both the U.S. Constitution and the Supreme Court again, as well as New York state law and the indictment itself. Now, while the Constitution gives president broad power to pardon federal charges, the president cannot pardon state offenses. The indictment shows that his crimes are on the state level, violating New York penal law. So no, former President Donald Trump cannot pardon himself for this case. If he is elected again in November, felony charges also usually come with some limitations. So one of those are being voting rights. So will Donald Trump be able to vote for himself in November? Let's verify. We went to state law in both Florida and New York. That's because Florida defers to other states' disenfranchisement rules for residents convicted of out-of-state felonies. Now, in Trump's case, New York law only removes the right to vote for people convicted of felonies when they're incarcerated. So that means if Trump is not sentenced to prison or if he is released before the November election, he will be allowed to vote. With your Verify, I'm Tradisha Woodard.
Some important stuff there, Tradisha. Thank you so much. And we know there's a lot of misinformation that is still out there tonight. If you see something that you think just doesn't look right, send it our way. You can email us at verify@wcnc.com. Well, this case accounts for 34 of 88 criminal charges brought against Donald Trump in 4 cases, but there's a good chance none of the other 3 cases will stand trial before the November election. Special counsel Jack Smith charged Trump with 4 counts in D.C. over his alleged efforts to undermine the results of the 2020 election. That's tied up as the Supreme Court considers Trump's presidential immunity claim. Smith also charged Trump with 40 counts in Florida for his supposed mishandling of classified documents after he left office. Just this week, the judge rejected a request for a gag order in the case. Trump and 14 others are facing state charges in Fulton County, Georgia, for their alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election results there. There's no trial date in any of those cases I just read. Well, we know this is a lot of information in a short amount of time today, and that's why we have everything and more inside the WCNC Charlotte mobile app tonight and on the WCNC.com. There you can find that includes the former president's full comments that we saw today and more reaction from local politicians.